Let's talk about Floodgates today. Hey guys, Otaku here, back with another competitive Yu-Gi-Oh video. So today I'd like to talk about locks and floodgates. However, before we jump into the video, make sure you windmill slam that like button and also subscribe if you're not already and you like competitive Yu-Gi-Oh content. I try to upload at least once a week. However, I am trying to move towards 2 times a week unless I have a regional, which funny enough, I have another one this weekend as of recording this video. But also make sure you feed that everlasting hunger of the YouTube algorithm and like the video and comment down below, you know, what your opinions are on the discussion of the video today. But let's just jump right on in. So floodgates and essentially locks, just cards that basically make it so you or your opponent, depending on who's playing it, can't really play the game. It should come to no surprise that this is pretty much a big controversy in the Yu-Gi-Oh community on whether or not floodgates or locks should be allowed or even printed going forward. And that's mainly just because you either hate them because you don't play them and you get hit by them, or you love them because you play them and it's the only way it helps you win. Now, I do, however, see both sides of the argument. I do understand that some people find the need, especially in this current format, that if you're not playing meta, you need a way to stop the meta. In fact, one of the top, big decks going around right now is a stun deck with, Pachycephala, or whatever it's called, and plenty of other cards that just prevent your opponent from playing the game. And then, of course, there's the everlasting problem that is known as the gimmick puppet lock that most likely is going to come to an end very soon with the upcoming ban list. And in my last prediction video, I actually got it wrong, I think. I said that the puppet was going to get banned, but realistically, Sanctifier is probably going to be the one getting hit. And the reason I say that, of course, is because Gimmick Puppets got revealed support recently, even though the support doesn't really use Nightmare. But also just Sanctifier justifies other locks like Jowgen or Ido, so there's a good chance that Sanctifier is going to be the one that gets hit. The only reason I said Gimmick Puppet Nightmare was because it just got a reprint recently, which usually follows the trend of this very popular card that hasn't had a reprint in 20 plus years, just got a reprint. Oh, it's banned now. However, I'm getting off topic, of course, and the question here is where do I stand personally with floodgates and locks? Like I said, I can understand both sides of the arguments. However, I am on the side that thinks that they just shouldn't exist, and any current ones that do exist should just be banned from the game. Now, I do play branded, and if you've watched any of my deck profiles, I do play the Gimmick Puppet lock. That being said, if it was banned, I would still be playing branded, but I also acknowledge that a lock is a free win if I pull it off, so obviously I'm going to go for the free win. Now, if you are someone who plays locks or floodgates and that's how you get your wins, or it's something that helps you get wins, by no means should you feel ashamed by it. I do understand that people in the community think that you are a bad player or they just shame you for doing it. I don't think you should be shamed for it. If it's available to you, it's a resource, so might as well use it. And like I said, especially in the current format, you're either playing fire or you're playing something that stops fire from playing the game. And so I do understand that floodgates and locks are very popular in this current format. But like I said, I personally don't like them, I hate going against them, and I don't always like playing them. Gimmick Puppet Lock is the one that I've kind of made an exception for, but I hate running floodgates specifically, and I really didn't like playing Jowgen. I personally feel like that locks specifically justify a very toxic game state where you are pretty much putting something most likely on your opponent's board is usually how it works, and you're just making it so unless they have a very specific scenario in their deck build, in their hand, or in their extra deck, they're not going to be able to out it and they're just not going to be able to play. And I don't think that that is a very healthy form of Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, I of course have gone on record saying that I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Is at its best when both players get to play the game back and forth. That's why I personally like the tier limit format so much, even though I didn't play tier limits at all in that format. So basically anything that's like Gimmick Puppet Lock, Jowgen, Ido, Ibli, or just any other card that you would probably summon on your opponent's board just saying they can't do anything is just not a very healthy thing. That being said, however, I do acknowledge the fact that the Gimmick Puppet is the worst of the locks simply because it is a lingering effect, so even if you get it off your board, you still can't really do anything. Whereas we do have stuff like Ibli Lock where it summons it onto your opponent's board, and if they have a way to tribute over it, put it face down, etc., they can still play the game. But then, of course, let's jump on over to Floodgates, cards that do have the ability to still play as long as you're playing under their very specific scenarios, like Gozen Match, There Can Be Only One, Rivalry, all of which have, of course, been limited, but then we have Summon Limit and Anti-Spell Fragrance, which have gotten very popular in this current format because they didn't get limited. If you watched my ban list prediction video a couple weeks ago, you of course know that I think that these Floodgates are also going to get hit to 1 on this next list. They're kind of moving in that direction, and I do think this is a good thing. Don't ban them outright, but make it, of course, less desirable or unlikely to see them in every single game. But I also do acknowledge the fact that these Floodgates do provide somewhat of a healthy thing to the format as well, depending on the format. Specifically here in the TCG, simply because we don't have Max C, which is like a pseudo Floodgate in of itself, we do gravitate heavily towards the combo decks that just go off and go crazy, especially when uninterrupted. That's why I think limiting these Floodgates is kind of the best of the both worlds. You're not banning them, making them inaccessible to players who want to still use them, but you're also not leaving them at 3, so that way they can play 6 different Floodgates and guarantee that they see at least one of them and make everybody else just not have a good time. However, that being said, I don't really think that there's really a win-win scenario when it comes to Floodgates. Everyone's going to be pissed off one way or the other. It's very common in the Yu-Gi-Oh community that we all just like to complain, especially when we're losing, which Floodgates tend to cause that for the person on the opposite side. There's also, of course, the argument that, like, Floodgates make it so their trash rogue deck can actually compete in the current format, but my argument against that would simply just be, if you need a Floodgate to win your game, then your deck probably isn't that good to begin with. I do agree that Yu-Gi-Oh! In its current state, especially here in the TCG, needs to be slowed down in some way, shape, or form. Things are getting a little out of hand and have been for the past few years, but I just don't think Floodgates is really the route to take it. Like I said, if you're just playing a Floodgate and that's your end-all be-all, that's how you're winning your games, then your deck in general probably isn't that great. If you're playing a really good deck and then you're playing a Floodgate on top of it, it just feels redundant at that point. But again, I understand, you know, if you gotta slow down your opponent to prevent them from just blasting off into space, then, you know, I get it. I see both sides of the argument here, that Floodgates are not fun to go against, but they're also definitely a necessary evil when going against just the insane combo decks that have become littering Yu-Gi-Oh's existence. However, like I said, I don't like Floodgates, I don't like playing them, I don't like locks, I really don't like playing them because I prefer to actually have a back and forth game with my opponent and have it be a test of skill, not a test of who drew this amazing card. But the main reason I don't really like Floodgates is because 9 times out of 10, the argument is always just draw the out. And I really think that this is just a really bad argument because, especially if you get hit with the Floodgate on your first turn after your opponent has already established a board, and then in draw phase they flip the Floodgate, if you don't have the out in those 6 cards, you lose the moment you pass your turn. And I think that's honestly the biggest problem with the current Floodgates that are still very available to us, which is Summon Limit and Anti-Spell Fragrance. Players over time have, of course, realized that you can establish a board, set the card, and then after your board is already established, then you can flip the card and it has no penalty. Whereas Rivalry of Warlords and Gozen Match, if you established a board and had different attributes or different types and you flip these cards, it would still punish you. So realistically, at the end of the day, there's just no right answer. You either get rid of all the Floodgates and the combo decks get to go just uninterrupted, or you let them reign free and, you know, they're gonna come up from time to time in certain formats. And again, I do understand why both arguments exist as to why Floodgates are good or bad for Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole. However, the only argument I completely disagree with, and I just think is overall a bad argument and more of an excuse, is the better draw the out argument. This argument was incredibly popular to be used in the Mystic Mine format, and just overall, just wasn't very good of an argument. I do understand that Yu-Gi-Oh, of course, has a sense of luck to it, so, you know, you're not always going to draw the out to any scenario, whether it's a Floodgate or a fully established board, but I don't think that that should be the argument as to why certain things should be allowed or not allowed in Yu-Gi-Oh. But that's really all I have for you guys today. That's where I stand on Floodgates, but I also wanted to address, you know, the other side of the argument. But definitely let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Of course, this is just a discussion. This is just my opinion, so let's just keep it very professional and cordial down in the comments below. But with that, like I said earlier in the video, make sure you feed that everlasting hunger that is known as the YouTube algorithm by liking the video, commenting, and of course, if you're not already, make sure you subscribe for future competitive Yu-Gi-Oh content. But with that, my ramble for the day is over, so I will see you all in the next video. See ya.